You eat one avocado a day? Maya said, lifting the glossy green fruit toward the light as if it were a small, improbable sun. The produce aisle hummed around them, the soft crackle of plastic, the distant beeping at checkout, a citrus scent undercut by the faint, earthy perfume of basil. Tom laughed, the sound small and skeptical. Is that one of those wellness trends? Won't that make me gain weight? Before he could finish, Maya set the avocado on the counter, tapped it like a patient conspirator, and said, "Actually, research shows consistent, modest daily avocado intake is linked to better heart markers and steadier blood sugar for many people. Big studies and university trials back this up. So stick with me. I'll walk you through the how, the why, and the one mistake that cancels most of it. Stay until the end, and if this helps, hit like and subscribe." One morning at Maya's kitchen table, sunlight pooling on a cutting board, she began to explain. "Think of the avocado as a transport vehicle," she said. "Not just tasty fat, a carrier for nutrients your body otherwise struggles to absorb." She sliced the avocado. The knife squeaked pleasantly through the flesh, and the room filled with that soft, creamy scent. Tom watched the green flesh give way like soft butter. He tried a sliver and closed his eyes. "Okay, delicious, but show me the science." 1. What happens in your body? When you eat avocado, the monounsaturated fat it contains signals satiety hormones and changes the physical behavior of the meal. Soluble fiber in avocado forms a viscous gel in the stomach and small intestine. That slows gastric emptying and blunts the speed at which glucose hits the bloodstream. At the same time, fatty acids stimulate cholecystokinin, CCK, a hormone that helps you feel full sooner and stay full longer. Those two mechanisms together reduce the urge to snack within an hour or two after eating. In simple terms, the avocado's soluble fiber and monounsaturated fat cooperate like a team. One forms the gel that tames the sugar spike, the other acts as a messenger that says, "You're satisfied now." Visual cue: a simple animated overlay showing gut to bloodstream with arrows slowing where the gel forms. Maya added, "There's also a delivery role. Many vitamins, A, D, E, K, and carotenoids like lutein and zeaxanthin are fat-soluble. Without some fat on your plate, your body absorbs a lot less of them. A University of Illinois study found adding avocado or avocado oil to salads increased carotenoid absorption substantially. So that green slice next to your salad is literally the taxi your body needs to get those nutrients where they do the most good." Tom nodded, picturing the avocado as a tiny cab weaving through the bloodstream. 2. Heart health. If you worry about cholesterol, this is the part you'll want to hear. A study in the Journal of the American Heart Association and other research have shown that regular avocado consumption is associated with improved lipid profiles in many participants, lower LDL cholesterol, and better HDL balance in some cases. She used careful language because food is rarely a solitary cure. These studies show associations rather than guarantees, but the direction is consistent. Monounsaturated fat and plant sterols like beta-sterol in avocados can help nudge blood lipids in a healthier direction. She sprinkled a little black pepper on the sliced fruit and inhaled the peppery scent. Potassium and magnesium also help with blood pressure regulation, so it's not just fats doing the work. 3. Belly fat and metabolism. Tom frowned. But won't eating fat make the belly worse? Maya smiled with empathy. That's one of the biggest myths. Your body's tendency to store fat around the midline is driven by many factors: chronic inflammation, poor sleep, age-related metabolic shifts, and high glycemic diets that keep insulin raised. Avocado helps on a few fronts. The fiber and fats support metabolic flexibility by moderating blood sugar swings and reducing post-meal insulin peaks, which over time can reduce one of the signals that encourages belly fat storage. Plus, when you feel full, you tend to eat fewer total calories later on, not because you have better willpower, but because CCK and the satiety signaling changed the biology of appetite. She reached for a notebook, sketching an intuitive curve. Meals with avocado had flatter glucose curves versus the steep spikes of a pastry-laden breakfast. 4. Blood sugar stability. This is where the gel matters, Maya pressed. Soluble fiber turns part of the meal into a thicker slurry. Glucose gets released more slowly. The American Diabetes Association-supported research has noted that including sources of healthy fat and fiber can lower post-meal glycemic responses. That's a helpful strategy for people worried about prediabetes or diabetes progression. She kept her voice practical. It's not a replacement for medication when medication is needed. If you're on diabetes medications or insulin, discuss any big dietary change with your clinician. 5. Gut health and the microbiome. Avocado's fiber is a prebiotic of sorts, Maya explained, rubbing the avocado seed between her palms as if testing the weight of the facts. Microbes ferment parts of that fiber into short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, which feed colon cells and reduce inflammation in the gut. An Ohio State University study tied avocado-rich patterns to shifts in microbial diversity and markers of gut health. Happier microbes often mean better bowel regularity and a less inflamed internal environment, which links back to metabolic health. The kitchen smelled faintly of coffee now. Outside, a neighbor's lawnmower started, a mundane counterpoint to the quiet complexity inside. 6. Skin, eyes, joints, and aging. Here's a lovely one, Maya said. Lutein and zeaxanthin, carotenoids abundant in avocado, accumulate in the retina and help filter blue light and protect against oxidative stress. Vitamin E in avocado helps cellular membranes resist oxidative damage. For joints, the anti-inflammatory profile of certain fatty acids plus antioxidants can reduce low-grade inflammation that accelerates tissue wear. The Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry has looked at antioxidant content and bioavailability in avocado components. It's modest but meaningful when avocados are part of a broader anti-inflammatory pattern. She rubbed a piece between her fingers and passed it to Tom. It was buttery and slightly oil-slick to the touch, like a small promise. 7. Hidden benefits, absorption and liver protection. You already heard the taxi metaphor, but another payoff is for the liver, she said. When nutrients are absorbed more efficiently and blood glucose is steadier, the liver is less burdened by excessive glycogen swings and fat deposition. Some cohort studies have hinted at protective associations between avocado-rich diets and markers of liver health. Again, we're talking association, but the mechanistic logic fits. She glanced down at a sticky note where she'd written, absorption plus steady insulin equals less metabolic stress. 8. Practical application, pairings and what to avoid. Maya turned the sliced avocado to the light. This is where people trip up, she said. Simple pairings make the difference between a healthful addition and a wasted opportunity. She offered suggestions that sounded like recipes and rituals. Mashed avocado on a slice of whole grain toast with lemon and a poached egg. Diced over a salad with olive oil and citrus. Blended into a smoothie with spinach, a small banana, and unsweetened almond milk. Or spread as a creamy swap for mayo on a sandwich. She suggested using it as a topping for grilled lean protein or mixing a spoonful into plain yogurt to combine textures and slow sugar absorption. But she also warned what to avoid. If you smear avocado on a giant cinnamon roll or drown it in sugary dressing, you lose the benefit. Sugary sauces and refined carbohydrates spike insulin quickly. That can overwhelm the satiety signals and blunt the absorption benefits. The number one mistake people make, and this cancels most of the upside, is pairing avocado with high sugar, high refined carb meals or pouring on deep-fried, overly processed sides. That combination elevates glycemic load and inflammation, which works against the good biology the avocado would otherwise support. Tom frowned, recalling mornings of avocado toast topped with honeyed jam. So don't pair it with sugar bombs. Pair it with protein, fiber, and whole grains. 9. Portion guidance.
9. Portion guidance. Or, mash half with a little lemon and olive oil and portion into freezer-safe cubes. That preserves texture and flavor for smoothies or quick spreads. She offered a few quick recipes: a lemon olive oil vinaigrette to spoon over greens with avocado half-moons, a smashed avocado breakfast with chili flakes and lime, a cooling avocado mask for parched skin when you want a spa-like treat at home. It's a wonderful multi-use food, she said, using the spa day metaphor to bridge nutrition and lifestyle. Then Maya paused and pulled out the reveal she'd promised at the start, the one mistake that kills most of the benefit. She lowered her voice as if leaning in to share a secret that was actually obvious once explained. It's not the avocado, it's the company you keep at the plate. Pairing that rich fat with high glycemic, sugary, or heavily processed foods. Think sugary dressings, sweet sauces, oversized refined carb sides. Triggers rapid blood sugar and insulin spikes. Those spikes can nullify the satiety effect and promote fat storage pathways and inflammation. That's the canceling mistake. The fix is immediate. Pair avocado with fiber and protein, not sugar and refined starch. Swap a muffin for a whole grain option. Choose grilled instead of fried, and use simple dressings. Tom made a face of revelation and amusement. So don't drown it in sweet dressing. Got it? Throughout the morning, Maya and Tom kept talking about trade-offs. They considered how an avocado fits into busy schedules, into budgets, into cultural foodways. Maya acknowledged accessibility concerns. Fresh avocados can be pricier in some places. When cost or availability is a barrier, look for avocado oil in dressings or spreads as a partial substitute for the monounsaturated fat and the absorption benefits, though you'll miss the fiber. Or prioritize avocado for a meal you care about, breakfast or lunch, and balance the rest of the day with whole foods. She also examined edge cases with empathy. If you're on a low-fat medical diet or taking certain medications, check with your provider. Same if you have specific digestive conditions that make high-fiber foods uncomfortable at first. Small, gradual changes work well. Start with a tablespoon of mashed avocado mixed into something else, then build up to half an avocado. A soft chime from a timer reminded them they had lingered longer than planned. The kitchen had taken on the warm, residual smell of lemon and toast. Outside, a neighbor called a dog. Inside, the small domestic world, scientific facts had settled into daily practice.
Maya closed by listing a set of quick, practical swaps and pairings, each phrased as an invitation rather than a command. Replace mayo with mashed avocado on sandwiches. Add avocado to salads with a lean protein and a squeeze of lemon. Pair avocado with eggs for breakfast. Avoid sugary dressings and big refined carb sides at the same meal. Aim for half to 1 avocado per day, depending on appetite and activity. Adjust if you have medical concerns and consult your clinician. She reminded them gently that change is a process. This is about making one reliable, science-informed swap. Over weeks and months, those swaps compound. Before finishing, she put a brief health note on the table. If you have medical conditions or are on medications, check with your doctor before making big dietary changes. The note sat like a small but important bookmark. Tom looked at his half-eaten toast, then at the remaining avocado, and smiled. "I'll try it tomorrow," he said. "Half an avocado with eggs. No sugary dressing." Maya nodded. "Start there. Observe how you feel in the afternoon. Notice if your cravings change. Little data points from your life matter as much as large studies when you're adapting behavior." She paused, then offered a simple closing. If this was useful, like and subscribe, and check out what happens when you eat yogurt every day for another daily food experiment. Her tone stayed warm and encouraging, not pushy. The kitchen hummed back to its ordinary rhythm, the clink of cutlery, the faint rustle of a grocery bag. And the small domestic experiment felt like the start of something steady, a tiny green habit that could, over time, shift the shape of a day. They cleared plates together, the avocado's creamy residue smeared into a satisfying, evidence-backed ritual. The rest of the afternoon stretched open, and for both of them, the habit to try tomorrow felt both doable and supported by the best available science. Morning arrived with a light rain that made the city smell like washed concrete and hot coffee. Tom set his alarm a little earlier than usual, not out of zeal, but because he wanted time to do the ritual right. Half an avocado, 2 eggs, a squeeze of lemon, a pinch of salt, a smear of whole grain toast. He cracked the eggs into a pan, watching the whites bloom, and thought of the small experiment as if it were an act of care rather than a regimen. Maya dropped by with a paper bag and a tumbler of green tea. She had written nothing formal, only a thin column on the back of a receipt. Time you ate, hunger at 3 p.m., scale 0 to 10, cravings, energy. She handed him a pen with an almost conspiratorial look. "Collect little data points," she said. "You don't need a lab. You need curiosity." They ate at the kitchen table while rain threaded down the window. Conversation fell into the same easy groove. Food mechanics, habits, the math of meals.
Guia de estilo e instruções para a síntese de fala. Você é narrador, palestrante, com voz potente, forte e autoritária. O tom deve ser firme e inabalável. Contexto de continuidade. A frase anterior era: Houve, food mechanics, habits, the math of meals. Você está no meio de uma frase ou pensamento. Mantenha o ritmo e a força vocal sem quebrar a conexão. Haja como se estivesse transmitindo uma verdade fundamental. Tam noticed the texture, the cool avocado against the warm yolk, and how the lemon made the fat seem lighter. He finished at a slower pace than usual, not hurried, and that pace felt like a variable worth testing on its own. At noon, he felt steady, no urgent hankering for a sweet snack. At 3, he sent Maya a short text. Hunger 3:10, no dessert panic, coffee okay. Her reply arrived as a GIF and a single line. Keep noting. He added another column to his mental chart. mood. He felt a quiet satisfaction, the kind that came from simple alignment, food chosen with purpose, not punishment. Over the week, the pattern modestly reinforced itself. Some days the effect was pronounced, longer satiety, clearer focus mid-afternoon. Other days the difference was marginal, perhaps because of late dinners or extra stress. Maya reminded him that biology was noisy. Sleep, stress hormones, and timing all threaded through appetite signals. One swap doesn't erase everything, she said. It shifts probabilities. But probabilities matter when multiplied across meals. They traded small refinements. Tom learned to add a scattering of chopped herbs for brightness, to toast seeds for crunch, to keep a jar of lemon salt mix by the fridge so seasoning wasn't an excuse to reach for sugary dressing. When cost was tight on a few days, he used a spoonful of mashed avocado folded into cottage cheese or mixed into a savory porridge. The point Maya emphasized was not perfection, but practice. By the end of 2 weeks, the change had become less dramatic and more ordinary. The ritual, half an avocado at breakfast, nested into the rhythms of their lives. Grocery lists, quick morning prep, and occasional slip that taught rather than derailed. Tom kept the receipt with his chart in a drawer, a small archive of mornings that felt steadier than the ones before. On a Saturday afternoon, they sat with mugs and a stack of cookbooks, already plotting the next tiny experiment. Something yogurt-based, she suggested, to test protein timing and gut feedback. The rain had stopped. Outside, the city caught light in its puddles, and inside, small adjustments had rearranged the shape of afternoons into something with more calm and fewer reactive cravings. They began the yogurt week the way they had begun the avocado weeks, deliberately small, not as a vow, but as an experiment whose failure would be data, not shame. Maya bought a plain, thick Greek yogurt and a tub of cherries that still smelled of summer. Tom bought a jar of raw honey and a packet of toasted oats. They settled into the ritual with the same methodical, low-key enthusiasm. Measure, note, reflect. Today, 150 grams, a handful of cherries, teaspoon of honey, Maya said, writing it down with the unceremonious focus of someone filling a lab notebook. Tom watched her hand move across the page and felt a curious calm.
Tracking turned mornings into a kind of tiny liturgy. The spoon against ceramic, the hiss of the kettle, the small mechanical joy of stirring. He liked that the action was domestic and ordinary. It didn't demand heroism, only attention. At first, the differences were small. The yogurt felt cool in his mouth and unctuous more than rich. The oats added a tooths of pause between spoonfuls. Mid-morning, he noticed less of the jittery edge that had sometimes come with coffee-only breakfasts. At work, his appetite for urgent emails dulled. He could read a message, breathe, and answer with a sentence rather than a salvo. A colleague asked if he'd slept better. He had, 2 nights in a row, and he said so, surprised by the directness of that confession. The pattern held unevenly. Some days the yogurt seemed to sit like a charm against hunger. Other days, after a late dinner, it barely registered. Maya reminded him that microbiology was messy, and that a week was a small window. Mostly you're looking for a trend, she said, a nudge, not a miracle. Tom learned to accept the modesty of the promise. The point, he began to think, was not to discover a new perfect breakfast, but to learn how his body and mood responded to small changes. The experiment functioned like a teacher that gave incremental lessons. Beyond physiology, the days revealed subtler shifts. Tom found that the act of choosing differently, of arranging food with care, chipped away at a few automatic reactions he'd long accepted as inevitable. He opened a drawer and resisted the habit of buying a pastry. He packed a small container for a late meeting instead of relying on whatever vending machine might offer. The choices were small, but over several days they added up into a different kind of self-conversation. Where there had been rules, I shouldn't, there was now curiosity, what if? Maya steadied him when curiosity threatened to tip toward obsession. She would unwrap a cherry, taste it, and then toss a speculative line. You could try half a scoop of protein next week, or more fiber. Her tone kept the project playful, not prescriptive. Tom appreciated that she treated the data and the person as separate things. Numbers to observe, not indictments. That kindness made the experiment sustainable. The ritual's reach extended into social moments, too. At a Friday night dinner with friends, Tom brought a container of yogurt and a jar of roasted figs. It felt oddly like bringing a card rather than an offering. The friends laughed and passed spoons, surprised to find the combo bright and satisfying. One friend, Mark, who loved convenience food and had a habit of going straight to the sweetest items on the menu, watched Tom with an expression that mixed amusement and curiosity. "You and your food projects," Mark said. But he ate 3 spoonfuls and then asked for the recipe. Tom felt for the first time in months that the choices he made quietly nudged the table's taste.
Not every social setting bent easily. On a business trip 2 weeks into the experiment, an airport breakfast offered pastries and oily eggs. There was no yogurt that met the parameters they'd set. For the first few hours of the day, Tom felt a familiar tightness, the old shame of having failed a plan. He noticed the pattern in himself. When circumstances resisted, his internal voice hardened. He told himself to note the reaction, not punish it. He ate a pastry, drank strong coffee, and then at the next meal chose a salad with olives and anchovy dressing. The small restitution felt more useful than recrimination. At home, their catalogue of experiments widened into a practical repertoire for days like that. Pre-made jars of yogurt, dried fruit to stash in a bag, a small scoop of protein powder for travel. The experiments yielded tools as much as conclusions. They built redundancy into their system so that the pattern, intentional eating, did not depend on perfect conditions. Tom also began to keep a different kind of note, a line about how an afternoon felt, unconnected to hunger. He wrote small observations. Meeting with Claire felt less urgent, didn't check email during breaks, and found that the link between his body's state and his cognitive habits was less speculative than he had thought. He began to identify triggers. A skipped breakfast made him prone to reactive answers. A steady one made him patient. He had always known that his mood and work performance were related. The new evidence gave him a language to describe it. Maya pushed him gently toward framing experiments with intentions beyond calories and satiety. "What if you design a week around creativity?" she suggested one Sunday, turning a page in a cookbook. "Eat for the afternoons you want to build, not just for the ones you want to survive." The idea lodged in him. He thought about the hours he had been losing to small compulsions, the days that narrowed into getting through rather than making. He realized that a different breakfast might be less about the stomach than about the canvas he had allowed himself. He liked the thought of feeding afternoons that mattered. They tried it, a week where the food choices foregrounded clarity and patience rather than a narrow focus on metabolic markers. They added turmeric to soups for its color and ritual, citrus in bowls to brighten, plain yogurt with a spoonful of dark jam on days when writing felt heavy. The measurements stayed, but the metrics shifted to include qualitative notes. Wrote 500 words with fewer corrections. Did deep work for an hour without checking Slack. The overlap between what nourished the body and what sustained attention surprised Tom. The same small acts, taking the time to stir, to prepare, to choose, served multiple needs. As the months grew, Tom felt a modest reshaping of his day-to-day life.
The rituals did not resolve larger uncertainties, work pressures, relationship questions, the occasional ache of loneliness. But the margins around those difficulties softened. Food habits became a scaffold he could lean on when other structures wobbled. He also noticed an old pleasure returning, the ability to make a meal and to be fully present as he ate it. It was not a grand revelation, it was a reanimation of small capacities he had assumed were gone. Maya, for her part, moved her experiments beyond their apartment. She organized a casual meetup at a neighborhood cafe one Saturday, a small table where people could swap simple, evidence-based food ideas without the weight of rules. The crowd that gathered was a mosaic. A friend from graduate school, a neighbor who taught high school, a woman who worked at the bookstore down the block. They traded recipes and minor triumphs, laughed about the absurdity of measuring yogurt, and left with new jars and a sense of being less alone in the effort to change. Tom watched from across the cafe table and felt something like gratitude, private and solid. The experiment that had started as a way to quiet afternoon cravings had become a frame for other kinds of attention, to work, to friendship, to his own capacity to alter rhythms. He thought of the receipts in his drawer, the small charts on the backs of envelopes, and felt that they were less about proving a point than about enacting a possibility, that life could be steadied by deliberately small choices. And yet, even with the steadying, there were tensions. On a Thursday evening, exhausted from a day of difficult meetings, Tom closed his notebook and told Maya he hated the word experiment for a moment. "It makes everything sound temporary," he said, "like there's a finish line I'm trying to cross." Maya looked at him, spoon paused over a bowl. "What if it isn't temporary?" she asked. "What if these are just ways to keep choosing what helps you be who you want to be?" He considered the question. The answer was not a decisive yes, it was a gradual willingness. He wanted the choices to be less about proving something and more about living differently. The daily practices, the receipts, the little charts, they had taught him patience with process. That patience began to extend beyond food into how he talked about the future with friends, how he opened his calendar to creative projects, how he forgave himself for missed mornings. Outside the apartment, the city kept its calisthenics of rain and sun, the ubiquitous small changes that rearrange a week without asking permission. Inside, their kitchen, the clack of spoons, the whisper of pages, the low hum of a refrigerator, felt like a place to practice the art of making a day hold. They were not reduced to their meals, nor rescued by them. The mundane acts of feeding had simply become an arena where modest transformation was plausible.